Hello, everybody. Welcome to Popcorn Planet. I am Andy Signor, and I got to ask you guys: do you actually know the story of Richard Jewell? This story didn't happen that long ago, and I vaguely remember. I was about 16, and I remember him being accused, but I don't remember really hearing his redemption. I remember it. I guess I remember it happening, but I definitely recalled him more so as being the guilty bomber of the Atlanta Olympics in 1996. If you don't know his story, the media is currently trying to get you to not watch his story. They want you to forget it, and they want to sort of distract you, and they, like the media does, they don't want to really want to seem like they're the enemy. And in this story, it's an important story that I really think more people should be seeing. And I think we should be speaking up to support this film, and not just the film, but just to get Richard Jewell some respect after all that he was put through. So if you don't know the story, I really like the film. It's an intense film. It's an important story. I definitely advise you go watching it, because if you don't know the story, I'm going to talk about it right now. And so feel free, if you don't mind history being a spoiler, I'm going to reveal it. And so my next question for those of you that know Richard Jewell, why aren't we talking about it? Why aren't we talking about this more, and why aren't we getting more frustrated? Are you guys paying attention to what's happening right now? Before I get to what's happening right now in the media, trying to destroy this really wonderful film directed by Eastwood with fantastic performances, particularly by Paul Walter Hauser, Sam Rockwell, Kathy Bates, John Hamm, even Olivia Wilde. They all give fantastic performances. And I think while it's, definitely of the slower pacing that Eastwood sort of does, it felt really gripping and engrossing. And I was really impressed with how the story unfolded. I'm sure he took some creative liberties in connecting characters or removing certain characters, and potentially making one of the reporters have sex for the scoop. We'll get to that in a second. But regardless of that, I went and I watched the 60 Minutes interview that he did. And I'm going to put this link in the description down below, because it's just shocking how spot on the movie really is. So for those of you who are like, well, is the movie accurate? It's pretty damn spot on according to the real 60 Minutes piece and what they report. It sticks to it a lot. It's based off of a Vanity Fair article in 1997. And for those of you that aren't unfamiliar with this story, Richard Jewell, I have a picture of him here. Richard Jewell was, I'm pretty sure that's the real Richard Jewell. I can't tell. Paul Walter Hauser, who plays him, does such a fantastic job. But Richard Jewell was a security guard at the Atlanta Olympics in, when was this? 1996. He found the bag that had the pipe bomb that went off, and I believe it murdered 2 people, and then 100 people got injured. It shot out nails. It was horrific. It was a horrific incident, but he found it, and he found it because he was definitely a little socially out there and obsessed with being in law enforcement. And that was all he wanted to do. And some people took that in the wrong way. And the movie even shows that he was a little aggressive and sort of really wanting to be that sort of powerful law figure. But in this story, he finds the bag at the Olympics before it goes off, and he helps get the word out. They check and they confirm it's a bomb. They start backing the crowd up, and then sadly the bomb still goes off and hurting a lot of people. But a lot of people saved because he found it and was paying attention. And so he was hailed a hero by the media, did interviews, Katie Couric, etc. And then it took about 3 days until the FBI deemed him the number one suspect. Why? Well, because he was a white male who wanted to be in the law enforcement, and that coupled with some of the stories they read about his background, the fact that he didn't get injured, it all sort of read to them like, well, did he plant this to be famous? Because that's sort of what he seemingly wanted to do. And to be fair, it seemed like, okay, I can understand why the FBI would investigate him. They should investigate everybody. But then what happened is the FBI leaked the story and said that they were looking into him, investigating him, to this reporter at this local Atlanta newspaper. And that's where things get crazy, because this reporter, played by Olivia Wilde, decides to sleep with the head of the FBI, who happens to be John Hamm, mind you, one of the most handsomest men in the world. I'd probably sleep with him even without getting a scoop, let's be honest. And so apparently sleeps with him for the scoop, as well as just trying to do anything she can do to get her name for herself. And by doing so, the media runs with it. They see his face. They decide, you know what? He must be the bad guy. And everybody all over, the Atlantic Journal, that's what it was. Everybody reported on this. FBI suspects hero guard may have planted bomb. And this created a media firestorm like none other. He was destroyed publicly, destroyed. His just followed for months. His name in the mud, every outlet digging at every little piece of his past. He was vilified. He was suddenly now the Unabomber. All these things were sort of thrown his way. His mom was who he lived with was both of them just destroyed. Just awful experience of a mob mentality, and the media just sort of deciding to pick a guy and say, yeah, he looks like he's the target. Screw him. He must have done it. And it's just terrifying. And in this day and age of cancel culture, which obviously is something I'm very passionate about because I do believe it's a thing, and this sort of proves it, people just see something and they decide, no, we are going to condemn that person. He is now dead to us. He is a monster. And so he never got charged, which was the crazy thing. So he never got charged, but the FBI misled him, according to him and his lawyer, which the film shows. They tried to trick him into coming in to fake read his Miranda rights. And you got to understand, Richard Jewell, not the smartest tool in the toolbox. He seems to, he definitely makes a lot of mistakes. They don't make him perfect by any means, but he's so obsessed with looking up to the law enforcement he always sort of, there's a bit in the whole movie like, hey, I'm a cop too. We can understand each other. It's, I'm here for you. He respects that office so highly that he sees them as the authority that he will do whatever they tell him to do, and it's a sort of innocent way that really bites him in the butt. That's what sort of digs him in even deeper, and you sort of really realize, look, that's where he sort of found his way. He wanted to be a police officer. He wanted to help people. He wanted to feel important in that way of protecting his community. And sure, he wanted a little power to go with it. They show a scene where he's at a college campus and he's pulling people over because they're drinking. And because the leader of the school, the principal of the school told him, we want, no Mickey Mouse in, make sure. And so he overdoes it clearly. And it becomes a sort of too extreme of a guard. And all of this stuff comes back to haunt him. And it all sort of paint this picture of him that makes him seem like he's a monster. And so the film then moves forward and we realize it doesn't seem like he's a monster. And he finds this old lawyer that he worked with, who's sort of one of the only people who used to work in an office who didn't talk down to him, played by Sam Rockwell in a fantastic performance. And he calls him up and Sam Rockwell realizes this guy is just being completely screwed. He's just being completely screwed over by the press, by everybody, and he really believed that the guy didn't do it. And so it becomes a redemption story that we've seen before. But this one just hit me harder just because not only was it true, but it's very important and connected to what's happening in our culture right now. And this movie should be held in a high regard. This movie should be lifted up and people should be saying, man, make sure you go see Richard Jewell. It's important to remember him and that story. And instead, what's happening right now is the media is trying to spin it because they make this choice in the film where the reporter who completely screws Richard Jewell, the reporter who completely destroys his life and runs with a story that he does not get a second corroboration from and just puts his name out there, which FBI suspects in sort of investigations that aren't being criminally charged shouldn't be publicly, knowledge. And she goes and reports it. And so in the movie, there's a scene where she's sort of flirting with John Hamm. You got to remember, she's been flirting with him earlier. It's not like she just runs up to this guy in a bar and then tries to sleep with him. No, it's clear there's a history there. They're dancing around. He's sort of looking at her. They know each other. Something's clearly flirtatious have been there. And then they go to a bar scene, and this character of Olivia Wilde, she's playing a real reporter, seems very flirtatious, makes these jokes about, I got to get bigger boobs in case this doesn't work out, so I can get on TV maybe. And they sort of show her as a sort of whatever it takes, boozy, buttons undone, flirts with the guys. All the guys in the office clearly love her. That's sort of the persona that she's portraying. And so the scene in a bar, she goes and sort of ends up asking, I need the name. I hear you got a witness. Who you got? And, John Hamm doesn't say, I can't give that to you. And then she gets in closer, flirts with him. And she's like, well, come on, let's give each other something. And then he gives her the name. And then she's so turned on by the story that she's like, all right, what are we doing this in my car or a place? Because now there's a clock to it. Let's get this going. And then sort of implies that she has sex for the tip. Now, look, I don't know. Did she? I don't know. Olivia Wilde now has had to come forward to defend because the media is just jumping all over this, of course. And now people refuse. I'm boycotting the Richard Jewell movie. I plan to go. A story needs to be told. But this blatantly false and harmful portrayal of a female reporter as trading sex for a news tip is disgusting. And while I'll never watch this movie, I think is showing his age. Clint Eastwood depicts a female reporter trading sex for a scoop. Her writing partner at the time and others in the media and the paper where she worked call it false and insulting. What's the ratio here of how many people of color are destroyed by false accusation versus one white guy? I mean, it's just blowing in a proportion. Is the movie making false accusations of its own? False accusal versus false portrayal. Every single film is produced has been a complete horse S. So hell no, I'm not going to see Richard Jewell. Turns a real woman now deceased into a F for a lead journalist, which is entirely false. Keep it. I mean, it just goes on and on and on and on now, just sort of destroying this story because he made a choice to just say that she was, a little bit of a slut. And now here's the irony, right? Here's the irony. This woman made a newspaper article about a man that was filled with lies. Filled with lies. He was actually innocent. Spoiler alert. Not only does he never get charged, and the film sort of reveals that, and the FBI acknowledges that they're not charging him and they have no evidence to point him into it. The film then, at the very end, and history will show, fast forward to 2000-something, the real bomber fessed up to that bombing and several others and is now in jail. So he's completely innocent. Completely innocent. And so they completely destroyed his life, this newspaper. This reporter does it all. And so how is the media replying? Oh, well, how dare you tarnish the legacy of the reporter? We don't know what she did. We don't know if she really slept with John Hamm, that handsome man. How dare you slut shame her? No way she did that. How do you know she didn't do it? Were you there? How do you know? I mean, we could argue, sure, Eastwood, why'd you make that choice? You could have just alluded to it and not been so heavy with it. Okay, fair criticism. But that's going to just completely dismantle the whole film and the whole defense and redemption of Richard Jewell because we're going to protect female journalists? Dudes, what is going on? This is maddening. I mean, there are very few articles out there that are sort of attempting to defend this still. But this is now currently where we stand. And it's terrifying. I'm trying to open. I just lost annoyingly as I was trying to give it to you. This Vanity Fair, who published the story about this, is sort of the one articles out there that I could see that was actually attempting to defend it. The Richard Jewell controversy and the complicated truth about Kathy Scruggs. The Atlanta Journal-Constitution has attacked Clint Eastwood's Jewell biopic for its portrayal of the late reporter Kathy Scruggs, but is the charge a diversionary tactic? Absolutely. Absolutely. And of course now, what better way to get the mob on board than to go after Olivia Wilde and Clint Eastwood for saying, how dare you slut-shame female journalists? Female journalists don't always sleep for the tip. Female journalists have to get flirted with all the time and deal with being a woman. It has nothing to do with the story. It has nothing to do with the story. The story is about one reporter, and the reporter, based off of everything that if you go read and look up about her, it's not that far-fetched that she might have done it. Plus, as even Olivia Wilde has had to come forward and apologize, which I thought was in here, but it's not. My apologies. Even as Olivia Wilde has come forward to defend it, she even admits on Twitter that she said, "Look, I don't believe she probably slept with him for the tip, but I did believe that they were in a pre-existing relationship," which is a very fair point. That's how it's sort of implied. And for people sort of saying that that's not the case, it's completely unfair and unwrong because, first of all, none of us were there. And so it's just, here it is. I want to actually read it. So she goes on and says, one of the things I love about directing is ability to control the voice and message of the film. As an actor, it's more complicated. And I want to share my perspective on Richard Jewell. Shut up. I was asked to play a supporting role of Kathy Scruggs, who was by all accounts bold, smart, fearlessly undeterred by the challenge of being a female reporter in the South in the 1990s. I cannot even contemplate the amount of sexism she may have faced in the way of duty. All fair, fine. As a child of journalists, Myself, I have deep respect for the essential work in the field, particularly today when the media is routinely attacked and discredited, and regional pieces like the AGC are disappearing on a daily basis. She's pointing a lot of blame, but the AGC deserves some blame in this story. Contrary to a swath of recent headlines, I do not believe that Kathy traded sex for tips. Nothing in my research suggested she did so, and it was never my intention to suggest she had. That would be an appalling and misogynist dismissal of the difficult work she did. The perspective of the fictional dramatization of the story, as I understood it, was that Kathy and the FBI agent who leaked false information to her were in a pre-existing romantic relationship, not a transactional exchange of sex for information. I cannot speak for the creative decisions made by the filmmakers, as I did not have any say in how the film was ultimately crafted, but it was important to me that I share my personal take on the matter. So this is all important because the Atlantic Journal-Constitution, the place that this reporter wrote this article for that destroyed Richard Jewell's life, has now asked Warner Brothers and Eastwood and screenwriter to issue a statement acknowledging some of the events in the film were imagined for dramatic purposes. Thank God Warner Brothers is standing by the film. The film is based on a wide range of highly credible source material. There is no disputing that Richard Jewell was an innocent man whose reputation and life were shredded by a miscarriage of justice. It's unfortunate and ultimate irony that the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, having been part of the rush to judgment of Richard Jewell, is now trying to malign our filmmakers and cast. The studio said in a statement to CNN, Richard Jewell focuses on the real victim, seeks to tell his story, confirm his innocence, and restore his name. The studio also pointed into a disclaimer included at the end of the movie. The film is based on actual historical events. Dialogue and certain events and characters contained in the film were created for the purposes of dramatization. Now, that's what every true story does at the end, and that's all you get. And so, how funny that the Atlantic Journal is now trying to sue for, oh, well, you guys are defaming us. So the ultimate irony is Richard Jewell sued, this isn't in the movie, but I had to look it up. Richard Jewell sued the paper and Tom Brokaw and all these other people that were out there just vilifying him. And he lost. He lost all those cases. And then the judges threw it all out and said, there's no case here. It's the same problem here. So this journal trying to discredit and sue Warner Brothers just looks like the biggest bunch of hypocrites in the world, because it's the same thing. If you're not going to be able to be accountable for destroying that man's life in your written word on the paper, sorry, the creative artists and producers of the movie get that same liberty. That's how it works. But of course, that's not how it works in social media, right? So now all it's going to take is, oh, how dare you slut shame women? Clearly, they've never learned anything after being sued for Richard Jewell, false reporting. Oh, I mean, they're stuck. But anyway, all of this is sexist alarm. Clint Eastwood movie depicts women reporter falsely while its main theme is false reporting. I mean, this is so unfortunate. This is so unfair. This is so misguided, and it's not right. It's not right. This is not right what's happening. Here's one instance. If there's so many of them online, and I couldn't find them all, but this guy, I'm sorry, whoever this guy is, this critic at the CBC News, I don't know who this, sorry, I thought I had his name here, but
rabble-rousing reporter.
He's reviewing the
kind
film.
Of reporter that all the guys want to sleep with, and all the
He's
women
talking about Olivia
can't
Wilde.
stand in the newsroom, but she's hungry for news, hungry for scoops. She works her sources, and in the film, well, it implies that she offered sex for a tip from an agent played by John Hamm. Now, here's the thing. Scruggs passed away in 2001, but now the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, her employer, is threatening to sue the studio executives, Clint Eastwood, the screenwriter. They're asking for a disclaimer to be put in front of the film. And on top of that, just yesterday, imagine this, the movie just about to open, and Olivia Wilde herself has tweeted explaining
so that she
from an agency and the so-called fake news media. But the tragedy is that in the middle of all of this is a remarkable performance by he gives you the idea of someone who is such a believer in law and order, even as the FBI agents are investigating him. He's almost opening the door for them. He's trying to help them out. He can't help himself, even though he is now the source of their investigation. So a wonderful performance, but because of the irresponsible way they portray the reporter, that kind of calls into doubt everything I've seen in this film, even though it's based on a true story. So I have to wonder what other artistic license is in this film, and that is why it gets 3 stars out of 5.
So there he is. This guy, this Canadian public broadcast reporter, basically just says, well, there's one fib in it. And first of all, let's clarify. it's not necessarily a fib, right? No, she's not here to defend herself. They made an artistic liberty, but this jump to assume that she didn't sleep with the guy, with John Hamm, is also unfair. She might have. John Hamm's pretty hot. If the FBI guy looked like, I'm sure, and they had a romantic history, and you know what? She's single. He's single. Sorry, it happens. It happens a lot. It happened a lot with Weinstein. A lot of people slept. Nobody wants to admit this, but a lot of actresses slept with Harvey Weinstein to get famous. That's just a reality that we can't just keep ignoring and say, no. A lot of people did that. And so it's really unfair to now completely torch a movie and say, well, that was false. So now that must mean everything else in the movie might be false. So got to give it 3 stars instead because you know what? I can't trust it. Here's what's frustrating, and that's why I want to sort of end this here with a 60-minute report, which I highly advise you watch. So if you guys have seen the film or you know the story, this 60 minutes report with Mike Wallace is fantastic because it not only does it sort of show everything, but you realize how good. What's his name? Paul.
Jewell says he alerted another officer.
He turned around, went back over to them. A conversation took place where more or less they said.
So anyway, you got to watch it. Go in and watch it on your terms. He gives this fantastic. Sorry, there it is. This 20 Richard Wallace. Was it Richard Wallace? Right? Who is his name? Sorry. Who does 60 Minutes? Forgetting people. Anyway, but that's not what's important here. The point is when you watch him speak, you realize that Paul Walter Hauser is just spot on. What a performance! They go through every part, almost so many pieces of the film about that just come forward and just even listening to Richard Jewell really speak and it doesn't feel disingenuous at all. But it just goes through the whole story, reading the articles about how he's a saint or a savage. This was everything. And then they go through and explain how people were like, well, he did all these media interviews afterwards. So he must have just been clearly doing this for press. But then as the movie shows, and 60 Minutes confirms, no, the venue, which was AT&T sponsored the venue, they all admitted, and the FBI knew this, that no, they put him on. They've confirmed, and they confirm in this interview, if you watch it, it wasn't Richard Jewell's idea to be in the press, we did it. So much, and they talk about how they timed the walk from, they thought he did the payphone, because the bomber called before it blew up, and so the lawyer, Richard Jewell's lawyer, sort of did a walked from one point to A and timed it, and it was like, there's no possible way he could have been there because people saw him when it happened. Everything was falling apart. And this thing sort of, everything in here reiterates it. The lawyers are there talking about it. The Tom Brokaw comments and why they're suing everybody. Because this piece was from 1996, a couple years after. Or a couple, pretty close to when it all went down. And then we get to see the mom, who does Kathy Bates' fantastic portrayal. I implore you, if you go watch the film and then come back and watch the 60 Minutes piece. And then start reading all these articles about people complaining about, oh, Olivia Wilde, how dare they imply she slept with somebody? It's just unbelievable. It's unbelievable what's happening right now in the media to destroy this movie. This movie is fantastic. This movie is fantastic. It is a movie that needs to be heard. It's a story that needs to be heard. And it's a hero who saved lives and just we as a society destroyed him. And then we just moved on to the next person like we tend to do. Oh, sorry, Richard. This guy had to live with this for the rest of his life, his mom, everybody. And then never got paid a dime for all the stuff that he had to be put through on this. It's horrific. And sadly, he's no longer with us. He died of a heart attack sometime in 2000. And so it's heartbreaking, and it makes me want to, stand up for him and make sure you guys go see this because people should see this film. And everybody boycotting on Twitter due to the potential lie of a female reporter sleeping with somebody to get the tip. I'm sorry, not a good enough reason. Not enough reason to sort of now boycott the entire movie because reality, it's happened. It's absolutely happened. And it probably happened a lot more in the 90s than it did now or the 80s, sadly, just because women had to do crappy things to get ahead. That doesn't mean that shouldn't distract from the fact that reporter still had a lot to answer for. That reporter, Kathy Scruggs, absolutely started something that she shouldn't have. Releasing that name was not okay. And now we're sort of saying, oh, poor Kathy. And we're not even supporting Richard, who is getting screwed yet again. He's getting screwed again right now by the media because the media doesn't want you to see the movie. Because the media doesn't want you to talk about it. The media doesn't want to know that the media does sometimes jumps on salaciously and ruins people. It's just horrific what's happening right now. So anyway, I'm clearly very passionate about this movie. I thought the movie is really well done, and it really bothers me when I see this happening. And it's sort of the perfect storm of a story that's so relevant to our time right now to show not only do people obviously get wrongfully accused of things, but the media doesn't care when they're proven innocent. That's what's so disturbing right now. That's what's so disturbing because people are guilty before, innocent. And that's not how it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be innocent until proven guilty, but now it's guilty until proven innocent. But when you're proven innocent, we're not going to report on it, so you can just pretend like you're guilty. Is really how we live in society right now. And Richard Jewell deserves the respect and honor of saving the lives that he did at that bombing and not to be sullied longer because we need to worry about Kathy Scruggs may or may not have slept with a person who was super hot to get a tip when they were both single and she's allowed to do whatever she wants to do because she's an adult. And because the movie made that choice based off the research they got of her to make a creative liberty, to make her seem not like the most likable person, which honestly, I don't think she is based off those moral choices she made as a reporter. Sorry, she's the villain in the story. And I think Clint Eastwood made a choice to make her a bit more of a villain. And for people just to focus only on that and ignore every other important piece and to be sheep and just be like, oh, that movie's full with lies. It's just unbelievable. It's unbelievable. So stand up with me on this one. Go see Richard Jewell. Please spread this. Go retweet the movie. Go suggest people go watch this. Don't let the media win on this one. Let's get this film seen a little bit more because I think it deserves to be told out of respect to Richard Jewell, who deserves more than he got. His family, everybody. This is just so sad what he was put through. And granted, there's so many people that happen to this. So many. But for now, for him to finally get some 15 minutes again, his legacy to get 15 minutes again after all that he was put through, and we're not going to allow it because of some controversy of, it's insane. It's insane. So please stand up with me. Go watch the film. Go support the film. It's a worthy film to watch. And if you don't know the story, I just spoiled a lot for you, but I still think you're going to be intrigued. Fantastic performances. So thank you so much for watching and check it out. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. Hit me up on social media if you have any other comments or any things to add to the story. I'd love to hear it. And we'll be back with more content this weekend and more next week. Thanks, everybody, for watching. Bye-bye.